Now, there is a rally planned in Olympia at the state capitol where lawmakers and the governor are still at odds with how to combat the state's major budget shortfall. I spoke with him in an extended interview about the deal he wants on his desk by the end of session. Governor, thanks so much for being with us on King 5 Weekend Mornings.
Oh, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Well, first, the state is facing a budget deficit of $16 billion for the next 4 years. You released a new statement about the latest tax proposal from budget writers, looking to rely more on cuts and fewer tax increases. What level of taxes, Governor, would you support, and what kind of tax?
My approach remains the same. We can't tax our way out of it. There's not $16 billion in tax revenue, and we can't just cut our way out of it. If we do that, we're cutting core services that working families depend on. So my approach is a balanced one. We're going to need some progressive revenue, but we need to make sure we're being as efficient and lean as possible right now as a state government. And so there was a proposal originally from the legislature of like 16 or 17 billion in taxes, way too much. More recently, they've come in at 12 billion. I said that is still too much. We need to have a more balanced approach, and I'm confident we'll get there.
And now, Governor, are you prepared to veto a budget extending a legislative session that would, in the end, be costly to taxpayers?
Well, I think it's premature to talk about a special session. I mean, we still have another week to go. It's not unusual for there to be a special session. You know, we have to, unlike in Washington, D.C., in Washington State, we're required by law to adopt a balanced budget. So we have to balance out that $16 billion budget shortfall. And so, we're working hard to meet that deadline. But again, it's not unusual for legislature and the governor to take a little more time beyond the relatively short time we have for a session. We are not a year-round legislature. They're only there for a few months at a time. So they're very busy. Legislators work extremely hard. So I'm not overly concerned if we have to take a few more days to wrap up what's a very complex budget process. The key thing is, the most important thing is to adopt a balanced budget that makes sure that we don't increase taxes on working families, and importantly, prepares ourselves for the chaos that's coming from the Trump administration on many cuts of funding from the federal government that supports our state budget. And so that's something we're very mindful as well.
Governor, we are in last place in the U.S. for officers per capita. Since 2023, the state has opened 3 new training facilities, one in Pasco, Vancouver, and as of this month, Arlington, making it a total of 5. Addressing the law enforcement shortage was something you spoke about very passionately on the campaign trail. Would you say we're on track to chipping away at that shortage?
I think that's a good way to describe it, that we're on the right track and chipping away. We're not going to solve this overnight, or in a month or even in a year, but I do think there are signs of progress. You mentioned the opening of these training facilities. So not that long ago, we only had 1 training facility in the entire state located at Burien, which meant, let's say you live in the Tri-Cities and you want to become a law enforcement officer, you'd have to leave your home for weeks to go through the intense training that is required. Well, if you're a single parent, what chance do you have of doing that? That's almost impossible. So we've been opening up these facilities, these training centers across the state. I was just at the opening for the one in Arlington a few weeks ago, which was a fantastic event. And that is expanding. We're already seeing the numbers increasing of individuals going through the training process because, not surprisingly, they can do it and go home at night as well, which makes it more accessible for Washingtonians all across our state. So I do think we're making progress. We're seeing that in the numbers. It's going to take time. We're not going to solve it overnight, but I do think we're making progress.
Are there firm plans to address homelessness in Washington that residents can expect to see coming out?
Yeah, homelessness is one of our biggest challenges for reasons that are probably pretty obvious, right? But particularly because you're dealing with a host of challenges. Affordability for housing. Often folks who are unhoused sometimes have mental health issues or chemical dependency issues. So you have an intersection of really challenging issues that all come to a head when it comes to homelessness. And so, what I'm interested in as a governor is investing in programs that we can demonstrate are working to help folks who are unhoused. And that's been a focus, I think, for the state legislature as well as we move through this session. So that's our focus, especially with challenging budget times. We need to make sure that the investments we're making on that really critical issue are working. And I think we're making progress on that with this session.
Governor, we are nearing the first 100 days of your time in office. Is there a campaign promise you're eyeing as your next top priority that you have not yet been able to get on top of?
One thing I've talked about a lot when I ran for governor was this issue of us having too few law enforcement officers, and that we rank last per capita in the United States for a number of law enforcement officers, and that needs to change. And one thing I talked about was creating a $100 million grant program that local jurisdictions who hire most of our law enforcement officers could utilize that fund for hiring bonuses or increased salaries to attract law enforcement officers. There's a bill that is bipartisan moving through the legislature that obviously I support. Feel very good about that bill, and I'm confident that will be a part of the final budget that I sign as governor. So one more piece to what you mentioned earlier of addressing this challenge that we have, and I think that will be an important step forward to get that to my desk for signature.
And this is just part one of the interview. Tomorrow morning, we'll have part two of the extended interview with Governor Ferguson on King 5 weekend mornings right after Meet the Press. I asked the governor about his thoughts on DOJ's work so far, deportation, and how tariffs are impacting Washington state. He also reveals a recently signed bill that may surprise and teach Washingtonians something new.